we are going to be putting our boards together, and we're going to be doing a dovetail joint. Now, there's several different joints we could use to put boards together with, but for the sake here, it's kind of nice to use a dovetail. It's very strong. Also, it looks really nice when it's all done. You're just going to need your two sides and your top and bottom. They're already cut to the right sizes. So your top and bottom, they are exactly 8 inches wide, and the height on these is 9 3/4. Your sides are also 8 inches wide, but the height on those are 11 3/4. So make sure those are exactly the right size, and the thickness is 5/8 of an inch thick. So we've already got those already from a previous step. We're ready to go. Cutting the dovetails, we can do it several different ways. Easiest way, and how I'm going to show you, is using a little dovetail jig. And it requires a router, and we've got two different jigs here we're going to use. How do you know which jig to use and for what? Well, we can look at the profile of the cut that it makes, and so this one is a dovetail shape, so that will go with the dovetail bit. And the other one is just a straight cutting, that'll go with the straight cutting bit. It does not matter which jig you use for each board, as long as you keep it the same per board. So the two sides, we need to make a cut with one of our jigs, and the top and bottom need to be with the other jig. We could go vice versa, have the top bottom with this jig here, or the sides with this jig here, as long as we keep them together with one of the jigs. So I'm just going to go ahead and just start off with our sides here, and we'll just go ahead and choose this jig. Again, it doesn't matter which one you choose, as long as you keep it the same for both. You want to put an X on your best looking face. Whatever face you want people to see, it'll be on the outside of your project when it's all put together. So we put a big X on there, and I've labeled it side so I know which one it is. And I'll have you come up to one of these little bench vices so we can hold your board straight up and down. We're just going to clamp your board into the vise, and we want to have the X facing out towards you so you can see the X. We're going to take our jig, and on the jig I've actually drawn some lines on here, and you're just going to line up those lines right in between on your board right between the two lines. And just get it right onto that edge line here, and we can see on this side we're right on the little line there. So just get it perfectly between the two lines, and then we've got to clamp our jig to our board. So we can just use some of these quick grip clamps and just clamp those on so your board won't move. Make sure this jig is tight down on the top so there's no gap up here as well. So everything's nice and tight. Clamp that real tight. Let's get one on this side as well. We're ready to go. Again, the router you want to use needs to make sure it matches the same shape as we're cutting in here. So this is our straight cutting bit. And again, it's got that little ball bearing there. That little ball bearing is going to glide right in between each of these fingers here. The main thing I want to make sure of is that you do not lift up your router. If you lift up your router at all, it's going to not be touching on the ball bearing anymore. Now it'll have the bit touch the jig, and then you can actually tear into my jig and ruin it. So we've got to keep it tight down the whole time. And as we go into each of these fingers here, that ball bearing will just glide right along and make its cut. And this one we actually have to come over and then go around, and we just go in each finger all the way and make our cuts all the way through. You'll notice that we don't need to cut anything on this one here. We're going to start on this one here. Again, keep it tight down. Do not lift it up at all, ever. So I usually turn it on away from it, and then I'll come right in. So we'll turn it on. Now, when you shut it off, you're going to want to lift this thing up naturally, so let it stop and then pull it straight back out. I cannot stress that enough, that you do not lift up the router at all, ever. Take that off. Now let's cut all of our pins of our dovetails, and they're perfectly cut exactly where we need to go. We need to get the other end of your board. Make sure that X stays out, so we just flip it around, keep your X facing out towards you, and do the exact same process here, where you're going to clamp our board in nice and firm, line up your jig between the two lines, clamp it on there, and then go ahead and cut these ones as well. Again, let that stop and then pull it straight back out. Okay, now you're going to have to do the same thing to your other side. So same jig, same router, both ends, so you get both sides with the exact same shape. X facing out towards you. You notice also I hit each one twice. That's just to make sure I got everything, just in case if I missed a spot the first pass, I hit each one twice. Okay, on your other boards, the ones that you're going to use with the other jig, one with the dovetail shaped bit, you can run these ones actually both boards at the same time. You just put them together, make sure they're nice and flush, even on every surface there, and then I would maybe just get some tape and just tape these together so they don't move on you. Just something that we can keep those nice and tight together with. You can do these one at a time if you'd like, but just the way that this jig is set up, because they're straight lines, we could actually stack two boards and cut at the same time. So I would recommend do both at the same time. It'll just go a lot faster, cut the line down a little bit on who's ready to use it. So, but again, just grab a couple pieces of tape, make sure that they're even on all the surfaces there. And then we're doing the same thing that we did before, except again we're using the different jig and we're using the different router here, the one with the dovetail shape. Your X's should all be facing out, so when you stack the two boards together, make sure both X's are facing out towards you here. Just clamp it in the clamp, nice and firm. The jig itself has the lines drawn on it again that you're going to line it up between your two boards here with. It also has just a little message here reminding you, hey, you can cut both boards at the same time with this jig only. Do not double stack the other jig there, it won't work out. So just the one with the straight cutters here. So, okay, on this one, you do need to go into this slot here to start off with, because you can see just a little bit of the side of this is going to get hit, and we get all the rest of them. And the very last one has a little bit of the side we still need to hit. So make sure you get into each of those fingers there. Keeping it tight down, not lifting it up. Shut that off. Avoid all temptation to pull that out while it's spinning. Once it stops, we can pull it right back out. Just get the other sides of this. Flip it around, keep your X's facing out, and we'll get the other side and we'll be done. Now this ball bearing, again, it has no wiggle room in there, so it really can just go straight in and back out, and that's it. So you don't have to worry about missing or anything like that. It'll go only where it needs to go. Okay, now once you get both ends of that cut, you can separate your boards. And we want to have all of our X's on the outside when we assemble this together. So I've got that as the bottom. The X is going to be on the outside. And our side, these just fit together, and they should, if we did it right, they should just fit nice and snug right together. If you need a little bit of extra motivation to put the boards in, you can use a rubber mallet or a little deadblow hammer, something like that, but be careful not to crack your boards when you tap them together. So again, X is facing out as you assemble everything, and if you want to just tap it into place, you can. If it is not going in very easily, don't force it so much that it might break your boards. We might have to do a little bit of sanding or shaving off on the insides of these to let them fit together. Last one, again, we've got our X facing out. Should fit all into all these little dovetails perfectly, and you can just tap them together into place. So there it is, it's all fit together. Now we still want to glue it, even though they're pretty firm and hard to get apart. I would highly recommend sand the inside faces of everything before we glue it as well. So once we know it fits, go ahead and carefully disassemble it, sand all the insides, and when we go to glue this together, all you want to do is just put glue in between each joint. When you're ready to glue it, after you've sanded the insides really well, I usually just put my boards together, squeeze some glue into each of these little dovetails. Same thing on this side, spread it around, flip it over, get glue on the other side, spread it around with your finger and all of those, and then just assemble it back together. So just by putting glue in between these is plenty. Put it all back together, tap it together with the mallet, and then I would get some clamps and clamp it all up. Wipe up any wet glue that drips out anywhere, and then you're good to go.